Mr. Chairman. This week's operations against Iran and Trump's obsession with military adventurism shows a huge gap between his promises to get America out of foreign wars and his actions. This illegal military campaign against Iran has resulted in the deaths of service members so far, along with the serious injury of others. It puts a target on the back of every American in the Middle East, and it has no clear end state other than vague promises about the freedom of the Iranian people. Trump claims this was necessary to prevent imminent threats against Americans, but he has failed to present a shred of legitimate evidence, and this is a pattern. Between Iran, Venezuela, strikes in the Caribbean Sea, deployments to American cities, threats to Greenland, and the way he's treating our NATO allies, Trump is creating more chaos than he's eliminating and distracting and exhausting our military in the process. He insists on fabricating excuses to push our military into wars of choice, his choice, instead of preparing for potential future crises that could have real impacts on Americans at home and abroad. We're here to talk about the NDS. So, Mr. Colby, I want to talk about our role as a Pacific nation. Every day, flashpoints threaten to spill over into war in a region of core importance to the United States, the Indo-Pacific. You and I have had many conversations about this region. I want to make something clear. We are a Pacific nation. Securing Americans requires securing the Pacific, where hundreds of thousands of Americans live and work, and millions more depend on peace for their livelihoods. 5 U.S. states and 3 U.S. territories are either in or along the Pacific Ocean. In fact, the only Veterans Affairs hospital outside of the United States is in the Philippines because so many American veterans call it home. And as the NDS rightfully points out, the American economy is powered by key trade and energy routes in the Pacific. But there are very real signs that the People's Republic of China is exploiting Trump's adventurism to threaten all of this. Just in the last 3 months, there have been at least 4 flashpoints in the PRC across the region. In February alone, U.S. and Chinese fighter jets engaged in a standoff near South Korea, and in the South China Sea, the Philippine Coast Guard claimed that the PRC jammed their internet access, the first time their communications have been disrupted. To show what Americans might lose if this administration gets a crisis in the Indo-Pacific, I want to discuss with you just one example out of dozens of possible regional flashpoints, the disputed islands on the western side of the Philippines. Mr. Colby, do you agree that one of DoD's major decisions in the initial hours of any crisis will be coordinating with the State Department and local nations on how to deploy the military to ensure the safety of American families, including arranging a non-combatant evacuation if necessary? Anywhere in the world.
I do, and I actually was doing that in the middle of the night last night, so yes.
Okay. In the case of a flare-up involving the Philippines, more than 750,000 Americans, 750,000 people, are living in the country, and they would be caught in the crossfire, and getting them out would involve coordination across as many as 6 countries' airspaces across Southeast Asia. Mr. Colby, do you agree that DoD would need to make quick decisions about how our military should be used to protect access routes, sites, or assets key to our global and domestic economy?
I do, Senator, and if I could just briefly say, I think the U.S.-Philippines relationship and alliance is especially critical, and I think we've made tremendous progress over the last year.
Yes, we have. A conflict in the western side of the Philippines in the South China Sea could disrupt as much as 1/3 of global maritime trade, especially supplies of oil, gas, electronics, and agricultural goods that Americans depend on, generating economic catastrophe for Americans at home. There's a clear danger to this administration's failure to prepare for crisis in this region that is essential to American prosperity. If the U.S. isn't prepared, flinches, or delays a response, the PRC could exploit it. We have to be ready right away. But that requires focus and preparation. And it can't be done. It can't be done when the Indo-Pacific is not a top priority. And it can't be done when President Trump insists on illegally and recklessly using our military to generate chaos around the world. If we continue to strain our military with wars of choice all over the world and make our enemies doubt whether we will defend our interests in the Pacific, we will all lose. And I cannot emphasize to you how important it is that we continue to focus on the Indo-Pacific.
Well, thank you, Senator. Needless to say, I disagree with your characterization of the president. In limited time, I'll stress that That is exactly why we are focused on your points on the Indo-Pacific. I completely agree with, and that is exactly why it is the priority. And I am personally focused. The Secretary, I know, is personally focused. Obviously, people like Admiral Paparo are personally focused on watching things very carefully and operating from a position of strong and clear but quiet and very close alignment with our allies and partners in the region. My first trip was to Korea and Japan. My first call, I believe, is as on Operation Epic Fury, was the Minister of Defense of the Philippines, Secretary of Defense of the Philippines. So we are laser focused on the first island chain.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.